One of the things I wish I would have done differently when I was learning how to code was planning out my learning process and being more organized, because it caused me to struggle so much, and it caused me to fumble around, and it caused me to waste time. And it's one of those things I wish I could go back and change. I look back now and realize that if I would have done that early on, I would have learned a lot faster and I would have got hired a lot sooner. Over the last few years, I've worked on getting more productive and being more organized. And one of the tools that I have used as my main go-to productivity tool has been Notion. I use it for planning my videos. I use it for planning side projects. I jot down different ideas. And it's something that has become part of my workflow when I'm planning things out and trying to be more organized. And since being more organized is one of the things that Notion has helped me out a lot with, and I wish I would have been using it when I was learning how to code, I thought it'd be great to make a video to help you stay organized so that you can stay focused and on track as you're learning to code. So I was super excited when Notion reached out to partner with me on a video. The thing about learning how to code, especially when you're learning how to code self-taught, is that it's really hard to stay on track sometimes because there's so many different things that you're learning and so many different resources. Tracking your progress is super important too. That way you can monitor the things that you have been learning and start planning what you need to learn next. And staying organized just makes you be more efficient and effective in your learning so that you don't get overwhelmed with all of the different things that you think you might have to learn. You can focus on the things that are important because you've been organized and you're tracking your progress in an app like Notion. If you're new to Notion and you've never used it before, it's extremely easy to get started. All you have to do is create an account and set up your workspace. Once you've done that, all you got to do is create your first page. Unless I'm just jotting down a quick to-do, I personally like using templates when I'm creating a new page when I have specific things that I want to work on. It prevents me from having to reinvent the wheel, and since there's already so many great templates out there to choose from, there's probably going to be something that fits my needs. And the templates are very flexible, so if I need to customize anything, I can. So it's just a good way to get up and running quickly. So the two templates that I like the most for learning how to code are the Computer Science Student Dashboard template and the Computer Science Course Notes template. I think those two templates combined are great for tracking your progress and organizing your journey as you're learning how to code. And I'll show you some adjustments that I make to them in order to kind of tweak them a little bit to work for someone who's learning how to code outside of a computer science degree. So we'll start off by just going to the template section within Notion once you've set up an account and have your workspace ready to go. That's just down here at the bottom left. And when you go to your template section here, you can just search for computer science. And these are official Notion templates. And that's another reason why I like them. There's a lot of good third-party templates out there, but this is created by Notion. So you know it's going to be good because it's official. You can see I've already added it, and I have it over here on my sidebar listed as the Learn to Code dashboard, and then I have Learn to Code course notes. I'm going to show you those, but I want to show you the default template first, and then I'll go over like all the little modifications that I made so that you can tweak it to be just right for you. And also you can add extra stuff too and go beyond what I've done with mine. So we've added that template. I'm going to add the course notes template. So again, I'm going to look up computer science, and then you can see here that top one is the course notes, and I'm going to add that again too. Give that a second. So now that those templates have been added to my workspace, you can see this is just what they look like by default. The computer science student dashboard here kind of has a section with a clock and a little internship countdown there, which are just some widgets there within those blocks. And then you have some quick access, a habit tracker. You've got a course list with a board view and all kinds of different layouts there for the courses. You have a homework section, you have a personal project section here on the side, you have an internship search, and then you have some code snippets here as well. And then you've got a resources section down there. And then on the computer science course notes, this is just a few tables with different courses that you can list your notes for as if you were doing a computer science class. And I'm going to show you how I use these with the dashboard and the courses here. So the first thing that I would do is I would set up a relation, and I would go into the properties, and I would go to the course here, and it's just a select by default, and I would go in and I would change that to a relation, and then I would have that be related to the courses within the computer science student dashboard. And then I'm going to have that show in courses, and then it's just going to be called course notes, and then I'm going to add that relation there. And now you're going to see it kind of changes that, and it says that all of these don't belong to a course, and that's fine because they were just part of those default selects. And now when we go to our courses section here, and you go into these courses, you'll see that there's a course notes right up here that if you add a course note or if you link any of these that already exist, so we can just say like new note, and then just add that to the course notes for this computer organization. If you go back here, you'll see that we have that new note there. And that's just a relation that I like to set up right away so that I can track my notes independently and have a relation set up so that they're better organized and not just dumped all into the course here, which is something that you could do, but I prefer to kind of keep this a little bit more tidy and not have all of that stuff just listed within the page here and have those notes separate. So I've already made a lot of the changes to the dashboard and this template, and I want to show you how that looks after I've made my modifications, because I think that this template is a great starting point, and I tweak it a little bit because I think the things that I add to it are more in line with learning to code, especially like learning to code self-taught or self-paced on your own rather than like with the computer science degree. And I'm going to show you my learn to code dashboard, which is based off of that computer science student dashboard, and that's this right here. And as you can see, it already looks a little bit different. I kind of got rid of that clock. I don't really see the need for this clock and this internship countdown. So instead of, taking up that space with those things, I try to better use the space here. And what I did was that I included a study timer, and I just went and found a Pomodoro timer that I can drop in as a widget, and I found it for Notion for Teachers, and it's a free widget there that I just Google searched it, and then I drop that in and embed it here, and now I have a Pomodoro timer. I really like the Pomodoro technique when you're learning how to code or when you're learning anything. So you work 25 minutes on and 5 minutes off, or you can do a longer break if you want, and I think that's just a good method for learning. Setting that Pomodoro timer is just something that I've kind of gotten the habit of. So if I was using this to learn how to code like you might be, I would highly suggest having a Pomodoro timer there right at the top where you can reference it easily, especially if you're in this dashboard often because you're using it to track your progress and staying organized with learning how to code. I think it's really good to have it in that spot. Next, I took the to-dos and I kind of moved them over. Default setup, it kind of has a quick access up here, and it has what they call the habit tracker here on the side, but I changed it to to-dos because I didn't like the name habit tracker, and I wouldn't use this as like a to-do for like personal stuff. This would be like coding or learning to code to-dos, and I would just have this here. I think it's a nice little feature to have that right here so that if you are learning how to code and there are things that you want to work on, for instance, a good technique is to write down 3 things that you want to do the next day, the night before. So I would just do that here if it pertained to learning how to code. And I think that's how you should use it here. And then here I have an AI helper, which is just a title that I gave it, but it's really the Notion AI block, which I really like a lot. Now, Notion AI is already baked into Notion, and you have your AI chat down here, which you can ask it different questions about your workspace and just different stuff about your page. And you can use it for things that you want to do on your page. But what I did here on my dashboard for learning how to code is that I added this AI block, which is basically an AI chat. And what I like about it is that it doesn't reset. So if you asked it a question, it will stay there until you ask it another question. So the question that I asked it was like, what are some common HTML elements? So let's say you were learning HTML this week and you wanted to ask it a question that you wanted to reference often, or if you want to use it as a chat, you could do that as well, or you can use the chat down here because I'm sure it can answer questions about different topics. But I think since this is my learning to code dashboard, I would have learning to code questions here. And if I wanted to ask it something else, I can just kind of change whatever it is that I want it to ask. And I know it might be hard for you to see down there, but let's say like, what is a JavaScript console log? And gives me a quick answer, and it says in JavaScript, console log is used to print out the output of the console and is commonly used for debugging purposes to display messages and values of variables during code execution. I think that that's a nice little touch. I think it's a better use of space to kind of have that AI block there, and that's how I'm using it for my purposes within this dashboard. And that's kind of how I restructured that top part. I feel that it uses the space better. And then you can see what I did here was I actually moved the links down. And these links, how I would use them is links for things that I'm referencing that are like my stuff, my GitHub, Free Code Camp, or Scrimba, and places that I'm learning how to code, maybe Mozilla, docs for like the main Mozilla page rather than like specific documentation, because we do have a resources section down here. The resources section I'd use a little bit differently, and I'll talk about that later, but the quick links are more for like things that I know that I'm going to be referencing often. Cool resource I found was roadmap.sh, and I'm going to talk about that in the next section here, but I did want to talk about how I kind of reorganized that top section and I moved those links down below to kind of take up their own spot here, because I feel like it laid it out better. And I think that having a good spot for all the sites and links that you frequent when you're learning is good, so that you don't have to fumble around looking for that stuff, and then you can build this list and have all the things that you know you're going to be using often in one place. Next, I created this roadmap section, and I just mentioned roadmap sh. I have no affiliation with them. It's just a resource that I found and I think is pretty cool. I think it's really important to have a roadmap when you're learning how to code, because then you know the things that you should be learning, in what order you need to learn them, and then you kind of have an idea of when you've learned enough to feel complete in the thing that you're trying to learn. So for instance, if you're trying to pursue front-end development, to have a front-end developer roadmap is really important, and roadmap.sh does a great job of laying out roadmaps for you. Their website is interactive, and I'll show that in a moment, but what I did, because their website offers you to extract their roadmaps in a PDF file, I took their roadmap and I downloaded it as a PDF, and I took the PDF and I embedded it here in my Learn to Code dashboard within Notion. I like having this here because then I can quickly reference, like, okay, let's say I'm just getting started and I'm working on like some of the basics and I'm working on HTML, and this week I'm working on writing semantic HTML. I kind of know that that's the stuff that I'm focusing on. And I know that, all right, next thing I need to learn after that is going to be forms and validation, then accessibility, then SEO basics. And then I kind of have learned HTML, and then I need to go and move on to learn other things. And really nice to just see this, because it's a good way to track your progress and kind of let you know where you're at. And if you want to use this interactive website, you could go here. And if you go to their website, you can see that all of these are actually clickable, and then they give you resources that you can use if you're learning how to code. And I quickly want to just mention that, but I don't want to go off topic. I just want to say that I did include the roadmap here within this dashboard in Notion, because I think it's really important to just see your roadmap when you're learning how to code. And the computer science template didn't have anything like that, and that's just something that I threw in there. On to the next section of the tweaks that I've made. We have the courses section, and then underneath it we have the course notes. This course notes is actually the table from the course notes template that I imported as well. There are some things with the template that are more specific to computer science and college, like they have the course codes and they have how many credits that's worth, and they have the homework that's linked to it. And I left the homework, but I added a project section too, because when you're learning how to code, especially using like online resources, there isn't going to be many times when you have a code or credits that are associated with them. But I left them there because some of us might be taking some college courses. Right now I'm doing Sophia, and I'm planning on maybe going to WGU in the future. So I'm leaving mine like this. If I do want to track the courses that I'm working on, I can add those codes. But when I'm learning how to code with online resources, I would just leave those sections blank and then use the sections that I need. And I showed you guys how I linked the course notes to the courses earlier. Homework section is here by default from the template, and I added the project section. Basically, all I did was duplicate the homework section because it already had that relation to the course, and I renamed it to projects, and then I went into the course section and renamed that because it was a duplicate, and I renamed all that stuff and kept that relation so that the projects can have a relation with the course, but sometimes you're not going to need a relation with the course because some projects you're just going to work on your own and they're not going to be related to a course. And I also thought of leaving the homework section because sometimes projects are kind of like homework for some of the courses that you might be doing online. And sometimes there's courses and there's books that might also have homework associated with it that isn't a project. So I did keep both of these sections because even though it's for learning how to code on your own, I think that homework makes sense, but it also makes sense to have a separate project section. I think that's just better laid out. And all I did was duplicate that, and then I added some extra stuff like the project URL, the GitHub URL, and then you can also link your GitHub database to this and have the pull request. So I added that to that table for the projects. Then in the computer science dashboard template, by default, it had an internship search, which is just a table. So I just renamed that to job search. And I do like being able to track the jobs that I've been applying for before. I've done that in the past, and I usually use like a Google Sheet or an Excel file. I think it's really nice that this template just had that baked in. So I think having this table here is easier to use than having a separate file. And if I'm in the process of learning how to code, I think having all the jobs that I'm applying for is really nice. And then you can kind of sort it by the different statuses that they're in. You can add the resumes that you applied to those jobs with, so that if you had like a resume that you tailored, you can add that resume. And if you're still interviewing and you made different changes because you've interviewed for a bunch of jobs and you have like 10 different resumes, you know which resume you use, so that you can like reference it if you do have an interview and you don't get confused with the stuff that you may have listed on there. So that's just something I really liked that the default template had, and I left there. The next section, which is part of the default template too, so I'm not going to go back and show you, I'm just going to show it to you here, is this code snippets section. I really like having this code snippets section because when I was learning how to code, there was a lot of stuff that I kept having to reference over and over. For loops were very confusing for me, and it took me a long time to get that syntax down. I also got confused with writing out functions and understanding the syntax for functions. So having a spot where you can dump code that you need to reference often or that you reuse often is really, really nice. And of course you can do that in like a helper folder or file, and you can do that within like VS Code or your IDE in a project that you might have. But I think that it's kind of nice to have this section of code snippets that you could just come back to easily and reference whenever you want. I kind of told you guys how Notion AI can, do different things for your workspace, and you can ask it questions about your workspace. You can ask a question about your pages, and I think it's really neat. And you can ask it to change different things on your page and within your workspace. And something that it can do is change code. So if you wanted to say, let's change this JavaScript to TypeScript, I could say like, change this to TypeScript. In just a few seconds, it will update this and change all that to TypeScript. Just a really cool feature. Notion AI is just something I've been using a lot lately, and I wanted to show you guys how you could use that quickly in this video. Again, you could use it to change a whole bunch of different stuff on your page, but it's kind of nice that you can have it change things that have to do with code, because if you're learning how to code and you're throwing in notes that have to do with coding here, it's smart enough to understand like the changes it needs to make for code related stuff, because it's using, a large language model under the hood that understands code. So it's pretty neat to have that. And then the last section here that I want to mention is going to be the resources section. So the difference between the resources section and that quick links section that I created up here was that I want to use these quick links as things that I reference often, things that I'm going to all the time when I'm learning how to code. My GitHub, my portfolios, my Free Code Camp account, my Scrimba account, Mozilla Docs, anything that I feel that I'm going to be visiting that is more specific to me and my stuff. The resources section, the way that I would use this section is that if I found like a blog article, if I found a book, if I found a podcast, if I found a video, if I found a Stack Overflow post or a Reddit post that had to do with a topic that I was researching or something that I was learning about, that I said like, hey, I want to maybe come back to this one day to learn more about this as I'm learning how to code, or when I get ready to get to that point where this makes sense for me to learn, I want to come back to this, rather than creating a bookmark and just dumping it into a bookmark folder on my browser, never to be seen again. I would put it in here, because if I'm in this dashboard, since I'm using it as I'm learning how to code, I'm staying organized, I'm kind of referencing all this stuff in here, I'm taking notes, I'm keeping track of all my progress, I'm keeping track of my courses, I'm watching my roadmap, I am more likely to come back in here and reference these resources than if they were just sitting in my browser bookmarks. And that's how I would use this section. And I think it's probably one of the sections that you should utilize as much as possible. It's nicely broken up into different topics here. So you have videos, you have books, you have podcasts, and then you can add more so that you can break that up more into like blog posts or Stack Overflow posts. So then when you add to this list, you come back and reference things that you want to at a later time. Those are the tweaks and modifications that I've made based off of the Notion template for the computer science student dashboard. There's so many other templates out there that you could probably use. I really like this template because it is an official Notion template, because it already is so well set up, because I can easily combine it with the computer science course notes template and have them work together. There's so many features and so much functionality within Notion that you can really geek out and go crazy customizing this as much as you want. But I do suggest starting off with a template because it's just easier than having to reinvent the wheel and set all of this stuff up from scratch. If you do want to set something up on your own, feel free. But I think that using the template and then making the adjustments that you need is the better way to go about it. And that's what I did when I set this up to a way that I think will really help anyone who's trying to learn how to code and using this. So that's pretty much it. I really hope this video was helpful. I'll have a link in the description down below for the template that I used in this video. And I'll also make sure to include a link that you can use to sign up for Notion today. All right, with all that said, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.